Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Planning Plus Software webinar number, who knows, whatever it is. I'm losing track of these webinars nowadays, but it's a cloudy day down here on the Tweed. Don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods, but maybe you might like to let us know. We've got a Q&A section where you can type any questions and answers into the Q&A box down the bottom. Please use that to ask us any questions as we go through today's webinar, which is all around contractor pay simplified with Planning Plus. So an interesting one, this one, because as we know, we have a mix of employees in our businesses. We've got the PAYG employees where they're automatically getting taxed and they're under all of our terms and conditions. And then we've got our contractors that come and go or prefer to work to a contractor arrangement. So how do we pay them and how can we simplify that pay? So that's our core focus for today. So welcome to those that are joining us on today's webinar. If you could just give us a bit of a raise your hands or where you're from and what the weather's like in your neck of the woods, that'd be good. We'll know that you're all on board. And today we've got our panelist. Our special guest panelist today is Craig Urlich, from General Manager of MSR Collision Centres up there in Brisbane. So I'd just like to welcome you, Craig, and thank you for taking the time to join us today on this particular subject.
No worries, thank you.
Right, so what we'll do is we'll get into it. We've got Vinny there. He's saying, hey, nice and sunny in Adelaide. We'll welcome Vinny. Vinny, as we know, is one of our, he's got the Gold Star Award for being our regular webinar attendee, and it looks like he's keeping up that Gold Star Award. So thank you, Vinny, for that. Nice to see. And we've got some other webinar panelists coming on board now. So welcome along to everybody. And let's get going on this. And I'm just going to start with Craig. Craig, being the general manager, like the general manager of 5 shops, let alone 1 shop, I remember way back in the dinosaur days when I was running my body shop, it was hard enough to keep track of, 6 or 8 technicians, let alone have how many you've got in the group over 5 different locations. So, but that's today's pretty much standard across the industry and where we're heading. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what problem were you trying to solve when it came to your contractors and payment of your contractors?
Well, originally our contractors were putting in an invoice book each week, it was taking a lot of time. It was taking 3 of our admin staff and payroll 3 days to do all of our contractors throughout the group. So we wanted to simplify that and get more accuracy out of it. So that's when we approached yourself about this module that we're now using full time.
Okay, so that led you to Planning Plus, but when we spoke about it initially, did we have an immediate solution for you?
Not immediately. So then we got into a conversation about you could build something for us. And naturally over a few months, we worked together and we've come out with what we've got now, which has fixed everything that we were after in the first place.
Awesome. So I remember that we spoke about it and said, okay, here's our problem. Have you got a solution? No. I said, I put my hand up straight away and said, no, we don't. I said, but here's an opportunity here. And if you're serious about joining Planning Plus as a family, and if you're serious about bringing your 5 sites on board, we'll work with you to create the solution. So as you said, over those next few months, and it was a lot of work from the dev team, and there were a lot of challenges within it. And you guys were gracious enough to come on board and do beta testing with us and iron out the bugs and make sure that by the end of it, we had that solution for you. So that would lead to my next question, which was, well, once introduced, how did the contractors respond and react to the fact that you were using this software to actually assist in calculating their pay?
It was a 50-50 take up on it. Some of the contractors were used to using a similar clock on, clock off system with in other repair shops, but they hadn't actually been paid this way. So it was just a matter of time. We gave them a few trial runs where they could check it against their own records. And there was a few teething issues along the way, which we sorted out working with Planning Plus. and got to the stage where they checked against their records with what we were printing out of Planning Plus. And when they realised it was actually more accurate than the way we were doing it beforehand.
Well, that's pretty encouraging then. So, especially on the accuracy, because we know that as a contractor, you're paid on what you produce. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure, well, if I'm entitled to that $30 off that job, I want to make sure that I'm getting paid my $30. But there were also a lot of intricacies around it as well, because as we know, we have supplements that come in at the start, as the job's progressing, and then we have changes to the job overall, and then so that job might have started at say $1,000, and then it might have gone up to $1,500, and then it might have come down to $1,350 by the time it was led to the invoicing stage. And I know that when we were working with you to develop the program, we threw all of those conditions back and forth to come up with the solutions that you can run, so that we now know that bang, this job is closed, invoiced, good to pay. Or we could even pay a percentage along the way. So that was quite challenging for both of us, but ultimately we were able to get it. So the big question for me before we just take a delve into it is, what benefits did implementing Contractor Pay bring to the group overall?
Well, as I said, it used to take 3 admin staff, our payroll, 3 days to do our contractors, because we run all of our technicians are contractors throughout the group. So there's quite a few of them. What used to take 3 days, 3 people, now takes 1 person approximately 2 hours.
Wow, that's a pretty big saving. That's a huge saving.
Huge. But then also the accuracy, it used to take that amount of time, 3 days, but then when you had additions, deductions, those sorts of things had to be done as well. So that was more time, whereas now it's done automatically. As a job is invoiced, it will go back in, recheck whether there is an addition or whether there is a deduction. The contractors have actually, it's been something they're happy with as well, because they're not having at the end of the month, they're not having a huge deduction or addition. It's each week, there's little, it's a lot more consistent.
Yeah, and I would imagine when we were talking earlier about coming on board with the webinar and just some of the idiosyncrasies of it all, you actually mentioned to me that there's some contractors that actually don't even present their invoicing book anymore or their jobs list. They're confident enough that you guys have got it managed, and what you're going to give to them is what they deserve.
Well, what we actually have now is they hand in their invoice book blank. All contractors do this. We're finding about 50% of the contractors now don't even keep a record in a notebook of what they've done. They're prepared to trust Planning Plus 100%.
Well, that's a big call, and that's really encouraging for us, and it's really encouraging that we can share this information out with the rest of our client base, or even body shops that might not be using Planning Plus, but they might see that, I'm running a mix of contractors and general paid employees, and how could we manage those contractors if we decided that we'd give Planning Plus a go? So that's great that we've got the confidence of the contractors and we got everyone on board, and we've got huge savings in time and admin and processing, etc. So what is the process now when you employ a new contractor? How do you express the system to a new contractor?
Look, we show him the planning side of Planning Plus. Just this morning I interviewed a new contractor to come on board. He liked the idea, the simplicity of it, where how you go to the board, see how he gets his work, and then just showed him what he has at the end of the week. All he has to do is hand in his invoice book with who it's to and who it's from, with ABNs, etc. We do a printout, and every single thing that every task that he has worked on for that week is done in a printout there, including all deductions, additions from a month ago, a week ago. Everything there's in black and white for him.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to run it. So I'm just going to go through to one of our next slides within our presentation here, and we'll just have a little bit of a talk about it as we go. And just raise your hand, everyone, or if a couple of people, if we can make sure that we can see that screen, that's really awesome. I just need to make sure that that's rolling and scrolling through. Okay, so great. Now you can see on this particular screen here that, right, great, thanks Vinny, awesome. you can see on this particular screen here that I've set up this contractor as a percentage-based pay. And we can see here, pay percentage of labour charged, and it's set at 50%. So over on the right, within a working overview, I can say, well, if this contractor he knew that within himself that he wanted to earn $2,000 a week, and I've set the target labour sales down here at 50%. And so he would need to produce $4,000 worth of saleable, invoiceable labour out the door. We can also set it up on basis of how many hours he works, etc., but it's not really that critical. And it's more on the weighting side of things. So we know that here's a basic setup here to kick him off as a contractor on percentage pay. So if I go through to my next screen, now this one here is an interesting screen because this is how we actually bring across the payments for each week. So I've got available staff, and you can see that I've got a date range up the top here. And on that date range, you can see that I've got 2 employees here, 2 contractors that are entitled to some payments. Well, this Gavin McGahey, this guy here is a bit lazy. He might not have even turned up for that whole week. Pretty regular for him. But this guy up here, this Gavin, he's here and he's on a fixed pay percentage of 50%. And he's produced this amount of labour, and he's claiming this amount of labour. Now, I also know that if I click on this production button, it would actually then display all of the entitlements that he has for that particular period. So that's how we can check before we even select him for the payment side of things. And then I can also click on my adjustments to view any positive, negative adjustments from that period. Now you can see down here, we've got a couple of options. So if I clicked on this button here, it would add these employees down to here, to our registered section in the bottom. I can tick here to say, well, do I want to look at invoice jobs only? I can calculate adjustments and finalise on invoice jobs. Or there's 2 or 3 different options here on how we can do that. And then if I move through to the next screen, we can see now that I've made my staff available, and it comes through to a different view and gives labour adjustments, labour claimed, labour balance, what the pay percentage is, his entitlement, and any manual adjustments that have been made. Now, over on the right-hand side, we can see that the claimable labour here for this technician, his percentage, his entitlement, his adjustments positive or negative, his total pay, and we can see down the bottom the adjustment note. So we can see a note has been put in here, 25% for paint materials and $30 for detailing. So it's really clearly laid out in relation to the adjustments, etc. So I would imagine that once that's explained to the contractor and they see the setup, that it's easy enough for them to follow, and they also understand the effect of positives and negatives that come in and out over each pay period.
Yeah, it does take a few weeks for it to for them to realise how it works, but like I said, they all trust it now. And as you say, there any of the deductions, it explains that on the top of their pay slip at the top. It says 25% materials, your $30 for your detail, all your deductions are there.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. So if I just go through to the next screen, this is more just a screen that's viewable on the selecting a pay period, etc., and the employees' names and what department they're in. So it's more just the bigger picture of this screen. But you can see here, this yellow box represents that this has got adjustment notes against this particular employee. So we can click on them and even view those notes. Now, if I go through to my next screen, this is where we are in our report generator, and we're looking at pay percentages here. And so we come down and select we want pay percentage because it's for our contractors. This just gives it the basic general overview. And then we would say produce a report based on what technicians we select, etc. And then if I go through to my next screen, this is the gold screen for the technician. Could you just explain this screen for us, please, Craig?
Yeah, up the top, it's got their claimable labour. And then over to the right, it's got their total pay, which is their what their entitlements are.
Yes.
Below the claimable labour, it's got their percentage, 15%, what their entitlement is out of it, less the adjustments. Sorry, the one on the right is their final pay. The entitlement is what they've done, less their adjustment. Below that, it has their adjustment with the note, 25% materials, $30 detail. And then over to the right is their total pay. We add a GST on top of that later. We could do that in here, but at the moment we're not doing it.
Okay, and down the bottom is all of the tasks that they've claimed as completed on the planning board. Would that be correct?
That's right. The ones with in the column that says adjustment with a yes next to it, that means yes, it has had an adjustment, whether it's a positive, negative adjustment, it'll say yes, so they can check. It's very clear for them to check any adjustments they've had. So if they've been waiting for a supplementary to come through, or they've been overpaid for a job, and it tells them the exact amount and the job it was done on.
Yeah, so that's pretty important, because this is the screen that really comes down to transparency, doesn't it? This is trust and transparency.
This is where they start to, this is where we gained their trust. They could see everything, transparency, like you said.
And their role that they play in this, because I'll just give a little bit of feedback on just some of the interactions I've had with contractors on sites over the times that we've implemented Planning Plus. Some of them say, look, why do I have to do anything in relation to the plan? I'm a contractor, mate. Just give me my work and let me get on with it. And rolling into this side, they know that if they do their part, and their part is basically just going up to the planning board and seeing their work that they've done. Do you go to the level of having them clock on and off the work, or just having them mark the task as completed once it's done?
No, they do clock on and off it. Might not always be 100%, but most of them are clocking on. They clock on and off every job, whether they actually clock on at the very start of the job or clock off when they have finished it at the exact time. Might not be as exact, because we're not actually measuring them. We're doing it for pay purposes.
Yes. And also it just that if they are being diligent enough to clock on and clock off, and for your management team to be able to see, well, where are we at in relation to the work in progress? That's where that becomes the value add.
That's the main reason why we get them to clock on and off rather than just marking completed. And we can, although we don't use it because they're contractors, we measure them to a certain degree, because we do, a contractor gets given a certain amount of space and we expect a certain amount of money to come out of that space.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. Like you've still got to pay the rent.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you guys have just moved one of your larger sites. Could you share with us how that went for you and where you've changed from and to?
Yes, we had a facility in Slacks Creek, which was your typical 1980s style panel shop. But the volume we have to do through there, it works exclusively doing non-drive type work. So we sort of ran out of room. The workshop was probably okay, but not much parking. So we've shifted from a repair shop that was around about 1,200 square metres to a facility that's 3,000 square metres with a lot of parking and another 1,000 square metres storage shed as well. That's taken up a lot of time over the last 6 weeks. The COVID-19 has helped us a little bit with that.
Yeah, it just allowed you to, well, obviously everyone's experienced that downturn of work through COVID, but obviously to do something as on a grander scale as move into a bigger premises, well, it's the old blessing curse, isn't it? There's a bit of a blessing in this and the curse in it as well.
Yeah, the curse was probably at the stage where it looked like the new spray booths were going to be delayed, but they were only delayed by a few weeks rather than months. So it actually helped us more than anything. So that's been up and running for a month now. It's full steam ahead. You would think we've been there for years.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I'll just share a little story with everyone about putting booths in, etc. In our shop, way back when, we were the first shop down at D&G Smash Repairs in Woy Woy. We were the first shop to put in a Cetal gas-fired booth, full drive-through in the floor. And I'd been holding jobs back so that we could put them through the baked oven process and the 2-pack process. And what my business partner did at the time, he got onto the local radio station and they set up a prank call to say that it was some German guy that rang me from Seattle and said that your part of your big engine for the booth is not in production, and you won't be receiving it for another 3 to 4 months. So that was, I can't share with everyone what went to air, but there were a lot of explicits there that got bleeped out of it, that's for sure. So I've been pranked on that, and I know the stresses that that type of information can create to you. So I'm glad that it flowed for you.
No, it was the booth guys were actually very good. They had to get permits to come up here into Queensland, and they put up 2 new booths and a paint room in 6 days.
6 days, wow, that's insane.
Because they couldn't go anywhere to a restaurant or anything like that, they worked big hours and they just got in there and they were up and running in 6 days.
6 days. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see that. I'd like to review what they ate over that 6 day period. I could only imagine it would be fairly diverse.
Well, there was a bunch of 4 guys that did it, and they had a bed and breakfast they stayed at, and they actually ate pretty well. They found out a couple of the guys were quite good at cooking. They'd take a turn each night at cooking, and they actually ate quite well.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. All right, well, let's move on. So thanks for that, because that's pretty awesome that we can actually then just review the different things that happen within Contractor Pay and what we do. I'm just going backwards through some of those screens, and it's a fairly straightforward process because it's just seeing who's available. Here's our employees. Here's all I do now for that particular period. I can select my ranges, add my staff that are from that period, and it will pop them down here and then calculate everything out for them. And then we go off and just produce a report. So that's awesome. Thanks for that. It's been I'm really pleased that we're able to get through that and work through all of the challenges within that. And I know from our development point, we certainly had some challenges, but Paul and the team worked really hard to work with you guys to overcome them. So it's great that we've got the result and things are working, and there's been some huge time-saving benefits to the business. Now, I know from that, you guys have been pretty diligent in starting to utilize our module on Track My Car. So once again, just around that, what problem were you trying to resolve that led you to Track My Car?
Customer communication. It's with our work, well, with most work providers these days, they require us to keep a customer updated with a phone call every 3 days. Phone call, text message, email, whatever they like. It's getting more and more difficult. People working, not being able to take phone calls, things like that. Technology these days is a lot more available. Everybody has it. Everybody has a phone. So that's when we spoke to you about something that could be not so much an app, because we didn't expect a customer to be able to install an app, but a link that they could go in and have a look at their vehicle whenever they wanted to. This comes back to another reason why we get the contractors that they must clock on and off the jobs, because of the communication out of this with Track My Car. Yeah,
that's a big thing of it as well. And how did you present the concept of Track My Car to your admin team?
It was an easy sell in a way, because we said the more customers, every customer that comes in, we ask them, would you like a phone call, text message, email, or here's Track My Car? What we're finding is definitely the younger people take Track My Car every time, but more and more people are taking Track My Car because they can log in at midnight if they like to see where their car is, where it's sitting. But the way we sold it to our admin staff is if this works in the proper manner, it will stop incoming phone calls as well as outgoing phone calls.
Yeah, and once again, it's time, isn't it? How can we buy back time?
Exactly. You know, when you have repair shops with 100 odd vehicles in a shop, that's a lot of phone calls each day with updates or people calling to see where their vehicle is. So by using Track My Car, it stops a lot of the phone traffic. So
what we can see on screen there, we can just see now that the image on the left side of the screen is job number 501. That link's been sent to the customer. He's just clicked on it. All he would do there is populate his surname, down the bottom and then click on the sign in, and that will take him through to the Track My Car screen. And we'll go to that screen in a moment. But I'd just like to ask you, how did you roll this out across the group? Because you're doing this over 5 sites. So did you just focus on one site and maybe picking a selection of jobs initially and then growing that? Or how did you manage that as a general manager?
Look, we rolled it out site by site, not all of them at once. And we did start off with our smaller site first. And as we rolled it out, we offered it to all customers, not just a select few. It was offered to everybody who wanted it. And we also let them know that, look, this is the first time we've rolled this out. Let us know if there's any teething problems. And there was little problems here or there. Someone couldn't log in. And sometimes it was our fault. Sometimes it'd be them, the way they were trying to log in. As we got that sort of down pat in the smaller shop, then we started to roll it out one by one throughout the larger shops.
Awesome. So what's been the general customer feedback?
Look, overall, we found that most customers we're tending to find now, especially in the larger shops, that when we give them the option of a text message, phone call, Track My Car, most people are taking the Track My Car because they can look at it anytime they like. And they're not trying to take phone calls, whether they be at work or in a meeting, whatever it is. So they can just look at it when they get out of a meeting. They can look at it when they get home from work. They can look at it in their lunch break, whenever they want. So we're also finding a lot of uptake too from people whose English isn't so good.
Yes.
Because they struggle with that communication on the phone, whereas something like this they can look at and it's a lot easier for them. And
also from that, you can put a note into Planning Plus, click on a button and say visible to customer. Yeah. And that note that would then advise the customer that, like, they're not getting a text message every time the car moves through the shop. It's just being managed in the background. They're logging into Track My Car at their own discretion. But if we do need to send them an important message, it will then ping them with another SMS to just say, hey, there's an update in Track My Car. They click on that and open it, and then it will actually give them the note on what the update is. So have you been utilising that feature?
Yeah, we have been, yeah. That works really good.
So we can see here on the left, this is what the customer would see once they've logged in, all of their vehicle details, and the screen on the right, once they scroll down, is just where the job's at, in the workshop, the date, it's gone through the repairs, ready for pickup, vehicle collected, etc. And then underneath that would be a map of the shop. And then if any important notes came in, when they did log in, the notes would appear up the top. So it automatically, they log in and boom, there's that update note right in front of them. So have you shared any of this with any of your work providers? Or because I know that there's such tight contractual obligations around communications nowadays.
Yes, throughout our 5 shops, we have one that is our biggest work provider. We have, and look, they were excited about us using this with their clients. I think you've spoken to the same work provider as well. They love the idea. It's technology moving ahead, keeping their customer informed. I believe it's the future. It's what we'll see more and more of from work providers will be forcing us to use this type of thing.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. If we think about it, we're always on our mobile phone. If a message comes through, people read them all the time. But if you give them control of looking at the status of their job, it's like you said, they could be sitting at home, they've just had some dinner, they might think, oh, I wonder where my car's at. Okay, boom, log in, 1 second, done. That's the beauty of it. And that's the stresses that we wanted to assist the body shops to take away, is to say, well, we can buy back some more time here by just getting our customer involved, letting them know. And I think you've done a great thing by offering the options. Hey, here's the options of communication. But fundamentally, I think that's a really important question to ask every customer. I know I used to do it in my shop, and then the team knew, and we put a note against the job that this customer prefers text, this customer prefers a phone call. Some of the elderly, they still just wanted to get their phone call at home because that's all they've got. But as we know, as time goes past, people are becoming, well, we can say it, time poor.
Yep.
So if they can just get something quick and easy and manageable, and we did that over 30 cars a week, 50 cars a week, 100 cars a week, that's where the benefits come back to the business, the benefits to the work provider, and it's the comfortability that it creates for the client. Would that be a fair representation?
Yeah, definitely. We're hoping more and more repairers actually take up on it, because the more familiar that customers are with something like this, the more they're going to trust it. Like at the moment, it's something new. So the uptake's been really good by the customer, but I think, like you said, the elderly sort of still want the phone call. Where it has helped us, we've had some customers where previously they'd say, I don't want to know about it until it's finished, but they will take this option because then they can look at it as well. But the more familiar with people are with it, the more they're going to want it. So customers who have been using it so far, when they have another accident, they come back to us, they're going to say, well, I'll take the track my car option again because it's easy.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So there you have it, everyone. We've covered off on the simplicity of contractor pays and how to implement that into your business. The contractors come on board and they actually then trust the system, and that's a huge thing. Everything revolves around trust and how we can get the buy-in of the team. And then utilising, and I really take my hat off to you, Craig. You must have presented it really well to your team to get them to understand that it's not only about them, it's about everyone in the team, and it's about our customers, and it's about the relationship with our work provider, and we need you guys to play a part for us. So that would have been quite a challenge, and to now know that you've been able to settle that in and get that consistency happening across the board, I commend you on that. That's hats off in that area, so well done.
Thank you. Well, it was sort of a combination of being able to sell Track My Car and the Contractor Pay at once, because in a way they go hand in hand. And selling it to the guys that it's more accurate, they can never miss out on any money that they're entitled to. Once they actually saw it firsthand, it was easy.
Awesome. So I'm just going to open it up. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free to ask any questions of myself or Craig, and we'll do our best to answer them. So from here, Craig, what's happening in the MSR group at the moment? What's the challenges?
Staff is still a challenge. We've been pretty lucky throughout the COVID-19. We actually picked up some staff. When I say staff, I say panel beaters. Spray painters don't seem to be a problem. Panel beaters seem to be a short supply at the moment.
And how's the work load at the moment, given the fact that we're just starting to sort of come out of the end of this COVID?
Workload's actually lower at the moment than it has been throughout the whole COVID-19. We've been one of the lucky ones that went through sort of untouched to a certain degree. Yes, turnover was down, volume was down, but we had enough work on the books to be able to get us through. It is lower, but we are just seeing that starting to come back just this week. Awesome.
Well, that's great. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions coming through, so we must have explained it pretty well.
Good thing.
That's a great thing for sure. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Contractor Pay and Planning Plus, the simple way, and also the tie-in into Track My Car. So I'd like to thank our special guest today, Craig from MSR Group in Brisbane. Thanks for your time, mate. Pretty awesome. Yeah, I've got a couple of people coming in there saying, yes, explained very well, thank you. So that's awesome. Thanks that we've been able to do that for everyone. And thanks, Craig, for his time. I impact on our guest time because we have to do a little bit of preparation and stuff and take a little bit of time out of their day. So thank you for offering up your time for us to share this. That's really awesome. And we'll sign out of our Planning Plus software webinar for this week. Thank you, Craig, and thanks everyone for attending, and we'll catch you next time on Planning Plus software.